Microbiota or microbiome means the array of microbes that make our body. You know, we're only 10% human, maybe less than 1% human.
10% human.
Or maybe even less than that, because in our bodies there are many more microbes than maybe stars in the sky.
Now, you speak in terms of the third brain and the fourth brain. Can you describe what is the third brain and the fourth brain?
Okay, so let me go into this topic that is very dear to my heart, because I was the first to mention the third brain. I even wrote a book entitled Your Third Brain, and then after that came the fourth brain, partly human, partly non-human. So the first brain is the one that we already know, the one that is inside our heads, made of human cells called neurons and glial cells. And then there is a second brain that was discovered about 15 years ago, and these are the neurons, human neurons, embedded in the thickness of the walls of our GI tract. When we say we have a gut feeling, it's more than just a saying, because these neurons in the gut are connected to the neurons inside our heads. So we may think that we have two human brains, one inside our heads and another one in our GI tract or gastrointestinal tract. And then I came out with the idea of a third brain made by all the microbes that inhabit our gut and also our skin and all other parts of our body. Because all these microbes, they produce a number of substances that are instrumental for the working of our immune system, but also for the working of our brain inside our heads. As a matter of fact, many neurological diseases ranging from autism to Alzheimer and so on, they're always associated with some unbalance in the composition of the gut microbiota, the gut microbes.
Right.
And so now it is known that these microbes, they exert a profound influence on the way we think, the way we feel,
appetite, emotional body,
absolutely.
and so on.
So we may say that these microbes inside our gut, they are very instrumental in determining the way we feel, the way we act, the way we think. And that on top of that, based on the last few years of research, I came up with the idea that also inside our heads, next to our neurons and glial cells, there are microbes. And these are the very same microbes we find also in the intestine. Until recently, it was believed that the human brain was kind of sterile. But 3 or 4 years ago, it was discovered, just incidentally, that it is not sterile at all. Based on this, I came out with the idea of the brain microbiota. That is like the brain microflora, or if you prefer, the fourth brain made by the microbes that sit inside our heads next to our human neurons and glial cells, and of course they exert an immense influence on the functioning of our brains. So now we may say that we have at least 4 brains.
Okay.
2 of them are human, 2 of them are microbial.
Do microbes have consciousness? And if so, how do their consciousness affect our consciousness?
That's a very tough question. Of course, microbes don't have a central nervous system, but they have a DNA, or other microbes, they have RNA. And if we believe that consciousness somehow is translated into genetic information, then definitely they do have some sort of consciousness. How does this relate to our own consciousness? Well, simply because there is always a continuous exchange of information between the microbial DNA or RNA and our DNA. So we may say that in a broader sense, microbes, they do have consciousness and they continuously exchange this information with our own information. Your emotions are heavily influenced by the microbes that are both in your gut, in your skin, and also in your brain. And I can tell you, this concept is so well accepted that people now are talking about psychobiotics. So you know about probiotics, the healthy microbes that contribute to your health, and you know about psychoactive drugs.
Yep.
Well, now people are talking about psychobiotics, that is microbes designed or selected so to influence your mood, the way you think, the way you feel. So this is pretty much accepted, and it is truly a Copernican revolution in the way we think about ourselves.
So, microbiota is an organ. Where does free will figure if we've got billions upon the billions of microbes determining our emotional body, our psychological body?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that you are absolutely right in defining the microbiota as an organ, just like the liver or the kidneys or the lungs. Just to think that the weight of these microbes, they are tiny, but there are so many that the weight is about 2 kilograms or 4 pounds, so it is heavier than our liver. And all these microbes, they influence our will. So you may think, where does our free will go? Well, we still have the free will to decide which microbes we want to have with us. So it is well true that the microbes, they manipulate us, but it is also true that by deciding what to eat, what to drink,
right,
we may decide which microbes we want with us. So we may say, in a sort of a recursion, that we can manipulate those who manipulate us. That's where our research went in designing specific probiotics that are designed so to give us a certain way of thinking, a certain way of modifying some aberrant behaviors. That's where we have seen excellent results in autism, right, for example.
Right.
By changing the gut microflora, by changing the brain microflora, people with autism, they show very significant improvements. Autism is a very complex disease. It is multifactorial, but definitely nutrition is a big part of it, nutrition and the immune system. And the two things go together because the immune system is regulated by the microbes. So by rebalancing the gut and the brain microbiota, at the same time you rebalance the immune system through nutrition, of course, and the brain microbiota, and therefore the brain function. So if you drink chlorinated water, if you eat foodstuff containing antibiotics, of course, you do a lot of damage to this little friend of yours, to
okay,
this organ of yours. But there is an advantage, because if you do some damage to your liver, it's very difficult to fix it. With the microbes, on the contrary, you can rebalance, replenish or fix this organ, simply choosing the right probiotics, the right microbes that you want to inhabit your gut and your brain. So essentially, by proper nutrition, by using the proper products, you can definitely help reconstituting this organ of yours.
Okay, and you're talking ultimately in terms of these microbial friends of ours, ultimately, in the ultimate expression, able to rebuild our entire bodies.
Absolutely so. These microbes were instrumental hundreds of thousands of years ago for the evolution of the human brain, for the evolution of the human immune system. So by reintegrating these microbes, it is as if we were reintegrating stem cells.
Right.
You know all the controversies about stem cell therapy, but there they were talking about the human stem cells. Here we are talking about microbial stem cells that come with food. So we're talking about the most natural approach to reconstituting our health. The microbiota, we may say, lives forever. Lives forever because the microbes were here on this earth, and probably they came from space before we came, and they will be here until the earth will be here. And even if the earth eventually falls into the sun at the end of its cycle, there will be microbes all over the universe. If we accept the notion that our consciousness somehow is incorporated in the information, genetic information in the microbes, we can definitely say that our microbiota will live forever.
So this is really what I'm driving at. The microbiota is really the way sign toward immortality.
I would think so. I would think so because the microbiota is also able to regenerate our organs. So it is true that our organs age and die, but the microbiota can help the regeneration of our organs to some extent. But definitely we can say that the microbiota will outlive our human body and will transmit this information all over the universe, or at least on this earth. And so, yes, I think that this is the path to immortality.
So what is striking me as remarkable is that we've spent hundreds, if not thousands of years learning how to kill little bugs, sterilize everything, destroy them, and you're saying learn how to work with them.
I absolutely agree. Until recently, until the discovery of antibiotics and chemotherapeutics, infectious diseases were the killer number one for mankind. So mankind was naturally terrified by the so-called bugs, or pathogenic microbes as we call them today. But only recently, in the past, I would say 5 to 10 years at the most, we have discovered that these little animals, these little creatures, actually, they do not only cause harm, as some of them do, but most of them are absolutely beneficial, I would say indispensable for our wellness. So we are changing again another paradigm, because now we have to nurture, to help, to feed these little friends of ours.
Beautiful. Is biological immortality possible? Can you give us any examples in nature?
Absolutely. So I brought my notes because some of these Latin names are very difficult to pronounce. Even for me, with my thick Italian accent, I should be well versed in Latin. Biological immortality exists on this earth, and there are several examples. There is a database of animal aging and longevity. And we're talking about animals in the wild. So in Iceland, in the Arctic Ocean, there is a clam that, assuming it doesn't end up in a New England clam chowder, can live up to 507 years. And there is a rockfish called Sebastes aleutinians, again in the cold freeze oceans near the pole, North Pole, that lives 205 years on average in the wilderness. And there is a red sea urchin, 200 years. And then if you go to the plants, you have the Great Basin Bristol cone pine, 4,700 years.
Are there any genes in the human DNA that actually confer immortality?
Yes, they exist. They have been identified. Let me tell you that we as humans only have about 22,000 genes, and all of them are very well studied. There are essentially 3 types of genes that can help conferring immortality to humans, and they do confer immortality to a number of other animals. Now, these 3 types of genes are called telomerase, BCL2, and clotho. They work on different pathways, but they all work in immortalizing cells so that cells don't age and the animal doesn't die. The flatworm, the plantaria, they can live forever because they're able to repair the damage that may occur with the passing of time to their DNA, and they don't age. The cells are always young. Lobsters are interesting. They die. They are not immortals, not at all, because they die on average at 31, 50 years of age, but they don't age. When they die, they are as young, as strong as when they were born. So that's a kind of very interesting, mortal animals that never age.
So what is it that kills a lobster? If it's not degeneration and entropy?
Infection and the changing of the shell, the molting. But they don't age. Older lobsters, they are more fertile and stronger than younger lobsters. So by exploiting this knowledge, now we are able to transfer these genes of immortality that we have as humans in our bodies and to make them work for us. So we may ask ourselves, is a human immortality possible? And the answer is, from the genetic point of view, absolutely yes. We know of people who age very graciously and die at very, very old age. The genes of these people are being studied. But let me tell you that the solution to human immortality, or the pathway toward human immortality, is not in human cells, is not in human DNA. It is in microbial cells, microbial DNA. We can exploit this little friend of ours to to do the work for us and to confer us immortality as human beings.
Beautiful. You mentioned Cloto.
Exactly. Well,
what is the story there? Are you familiar with it?
Not too much with Greek mythology, but I remember there were three fates. I don't remember exactly the name of the first one, but the last one was Atropos, the one that cut the thread of life. Clotho was the one in between, the one who decided... Threaded and decided. I think the first one, her name was Lachesis. And then you had Clotho threading the thread of life and deciding the length of life of humans and of gods. According to the Greek mythology, even gods, they had to die, and Clotho was the one deciding. Now, Clotho could be fooled and was fooled in Greek mythology, and we hope to be able to fool her or the protein that has her name also in our human life. Now, Clotho is the name that some scientists gave to a gene that is known to confer immortality by reverse aging. So essentially, if you work on this protein, you're able to reverse aging in mice. Mice are very close to humans as far as evolution is concerned. We have very good probabilities to be able to exploit this knowledge to reverse aging in humans as well.
And it's a given, therefore, that we ultimately have the capacity to heal every single ailment.
I think that we are very close to this, very, very close. Just think that about 2,000 years ago, that in terms of evolution is a negligible time distance, average age was 35-40 years. Now it's 80 years, and this only due to sanitation, hygiene, and medicines. I think that it is absolutely reasonable to think that we can go up to 160, maybe 200 years of age, because this is written in our DNA. There is a Russian scientist, his name is Marios Kyriazis, he's a biogerontologist who suggests that biological immortality in humans is an inevitable consequence of natural evolution.
Beautiful.
So we're not talking about anything that goes against evolution. We are talking about that could be the inevitable consequence of a natural evolution. Of course, we have to find a good balance with the rest of the species, the rest of life on this planet, because without that we are all dead. But if we find a good balance, good sustainability, I think that human immortality, reversal of aging, is not science fiction. It's
a natural consequence.
It's a natural consequence
of our evolution. And what was it or is it that brings about entropy in human DNA? What do we know about this? How much do we know about this trigger that occurs somewhere between the age of possibly 35 and 40? Something happens one fine day.
Well, we start to decompose the very day we are born. We are rebuilding up to a certain point. Then there is a sort of a program in our DNA that tells our cells, stop healing yourself. Because you have lived too much, so you have to die, essentially. This process in cell biology is called apoptosis. Now, we can arrange things so that we can reverse this process without inducing a cancer. That's the big risk, because cancer cells, they are immortal. In a laboratory, in petri dishes, we have cancer cells of people who died of that cancer 60 years ago.
And the cancer is alive and well.
They are alive and well all over the laboratories in the world. This is a cell line called HeLa, from the name of Henrietta Lacks, the poor lady who died of this cancer, and her cells were put in a petri dish, and now they are all over the laboratories, all over the world, alive and very well. Now, we don't want that type of immortality, because we don't want immortality leading to cancer. We want immortality leading to health and beauty, health and wellness.
Well, what do we know about the mechanisms by which the microbes in our brain are influencing our mood and our emotion and so on?
There are many theories, but one theory just came out recently, and we are proud that we are among those who proposed this theory. They work through a system that is called the Endocannabinoid System. I think you know about marijuana or hashish and tetrahydrocannabinoid, That's the psychoactive plant derivative from hemp. But also, you probably know about CBD oil. That's the chemical derived from hemp that has a number of very positive, healthy functions in our body. Now, all these substances, they work on receptors that are our own receptors. And it has been found that we have an agonist that is a natural endocannabinoid produced in our body that contributes to our well-being, the functioning of our immune system, and the way we reason in a positive way. Well, we have found that some microbes, they help our body building our own endocannabinoid. So you don't need to take CBD oil, because these microbes that we have developed in a specific concept, in a specific novel probiotic concept, these microbes, they work through the endocannabinoid system because they induce the body to produce its own agonist. That's why they work so much in neurodegenerative diseases such as autism or Alzheimer or multiple sclerosis, because they work on the natural pathway that it is at work every time you use, for example, CBD oils.
What do they have to do with empathy, with bliss, for instance, with our capacity to have an orgasmic life?
Well, you know, you have certainly read The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. So you can open the doors of perception with plant derivatives, like those that come from fungi. But those fungi from Mexico, they work on our own receptors. So you can also open the doors of perception by inducing the body to produce its own substances, physiological, natural. And the microbes, they can work through these pathways. Point is, you have to know which microbes you want to be at work in your body. We know, and that's why we can produce these psychobiotics that help us function much, much better.
Beautiful. Thank you.